My name is Michelle. I grew up in a Christian home, so I went to church every Sunday, and God was really in my life. I went to Smithtown Christian School, and I love the Lord. And I'm a rule follower, so all through school, I did exactly what I was supposed to do. And then I graduated from high school, and I started college, and the world became much bigger to me then. So I still had my Christian upbringing, but I decided that I wanted to have a little bit more fun. So I started working at a restaurant right out of high school, and I was going to college. I wanted to be a teacher, a music teacher at the time. And I got involved with some friends who would go out after work, and I thought that was a lot of fun. And then I started dating a guy, and he was not a Christian. But I thought in my mind, I can turn him to the Lord. I can make him be a Christian. And that didn't happen exactly. So instead, I got pulled a little bit farther away from the Lord. And then he moved. He went down to Virginia. And I said, oh, that's wonderful. I want to go to school in Virginia. So I went to college down there. And everything was working out great according to what I thought. And when I was away at school, my parents, who struggled with their marriage, had decided that they were going to get a divorce. And a few months later, around Christmas, my younger brother was diagnosed with a very rare cancer. And he was at Sloan Kettering, and his chances of survival were very low. So we had all that going on, and that was in 1990. And then in 1991, I turned 21, and I thought, this is just great. Life is going exactly the way I want it to go. And then a few days later, after I turned 21 on April 1st, April Fool's Day, I found out that I was pregnant. It was not a joke. And my life completely changed. I went to tell my boyfriend at the time that I was pregnant, and he said that this was not in his plan and that he didn't really love me in that way, and that he did not want me to have the baby. And with everything that was going on with my family, with my brother being so sick and my mom being in the hospital with him most of the time, and my parents had stopped their divorce at that point because they wanted to help my brother through it. And I didn't know what to do. I'm thinking, I can't really go home and deal with everything with my brother and my parents, and my boyfriend doesn't want this baby. What should I do? So I actually went to Planned Parenthood, and I had a meeting there with them. And God was so good, because the woman who I met with, she didn't really push anything. She said, here are your options. Think about them and make a decision. So I went back to my dorm, because I was away at school, and I thought about it, and I just knew that I couldn't not have this baby. It just wasn't something I could do. But I felt all alone. I didn't know how to tell my family, who was going through so much. So God gave me a beautiful friend down there, my friend Yvette, who was my lifeline. She would take me home with her on the weekends. She would make sure that I was eating. She took very good care of me. And then one day I was on the phone with my mom, and I was trying to act like everything was fine. And she said, Michelle, something isn't right. So we started talking, and I said, no, everything's good. And she said, no, tell me what's wrong. And I said, no, everything's good. She said, if you don't tell me what's wrong, I'm going to be really mad. I said, oh, Mom, if I tell you what's wrong, you're going to be really mad. So I wound up telling her, and the way she reacted was phenomenal. She said, Michelle, come home for the weekend, and we're going to talk about this. So I drove from Virginia back to New York, and my mom was just so comforting to me. And she said, whatever you want to do, whatever you decide, I'm going to back you up. My father, on the other hand, was not as understanding. So even though we were from a Christian home, he said, the best thing for you to do is to not have this baby. And I said, well, I think I have to have this baby. I can't not have this baby. I could never live with myself. And he said, well, if you decide to have this baby, then you cannot come home. And that was really hard. And my mom said, Michelle, if you want to have this baby, then you come home and we'll work it out. So that's what I did. I said, no, I want to have this baby. At that time, I didn't know whether I could give the baby up for adoption or I would keep the baby. So my parents put the house on the market because I wasn't allowed back in. So while my brother was going through all of his treatments, our house went up for sale. And I came home and I had a decision to make whether I wanted to give this baby up for adoption. I even talked to some people about it, but I knew in my heart that I just couldn't do that either. So I really just prayed that God would give me everything that I needed, that I could be the mother that this child needed. And life was tough because in those months we were packing up the house and I was with my dad a lot because my mom was with my brother in the hospital. And it was very challenging because my dad really was not in support of anything that I was doing. And it was really difficult. While I was pregnant with her, I was finishing up my schooling. I knew that it was really important for me to have a job that I could then provide for my daughter. So we eventually sold the house, and my mom, my brother, and I moved into a home that needed some work. And so I was in the house by myself, 7 months pregnant, trying to get the house fixed up. My mother was in the hospital a lot with my brother. I remember one night very clearly. I was a few weeks away from giving birth to my daughter, and my mom and my brother came home, and they had been in the hospital for a while, and I was so happy to have them home with me. And within a few hours, he started not feeling well, and they knew they had to go back to the hospital. And I remember they went into the car and they left, and I was home alone again. And I was besides myself. I was pregnant, I was alone in this house, my life had totally changed. So I tried calling everyone I could to try and get someone who could listen to me and make me feel better. And the funny thing was I was not able to get in touch with anyone. So I remember sitting in my room that night just thinking, everything is going crazy, my life is upside down. How did it turn out this way? And I felt like everything was spinning around me. And then all of a sudden, from that craziness, came such a comforting peace. And a peace that I've never felt before in my life. And I could almost hear God saying to me, Michelle, are you going to finally give this to me? Are you going to let me help you through this? Because I think I had been pushing and trying so hard to do everything to get myself through this pregnancy, to get myself through everything that was going on in my life, that I never really stopped and just said, God, whatever you want for me. And from that point on, I really felt God's presence in everything that I was going through. And I knew that it was going to be okay. And so a few weeks later, I wound up giving birth to my beautiful daughter. And I remember being scared that I was so sad throughout most of the pregnancy. It was so difficult. And I thought, how am I going to bond with this child? What kind of a mom am I going to be? And I remember after I had her, I was almost relieved when they said, we're going to take her and we're going to fix her up and everything. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, so this is really it. This is where it all begins. And then they brought her back to me. And the moment that I looked at her and she made contact with me and we looked into each other's eyes, I knew it was the best decision I ever made in my life. And God sent so many people into my life that helped me through all of that. My sisters and my brothers and everyone, many people in my church were very supportive. And it was like a village coming around me, helping me raise my daughter. And the funny thing is, my father, who was very challenging through all of this, God put something in my daughter's heart that from the minute she was a little baby, when my father would come by, she reacted so funny, like she was so happy to see him. And then the older she got, he would walk in the door and she would run up to him and give him the biggest hugs and kisses. So God does have a sense of humor, because it softened my dad's heart so much that he then became a very big part of our lives again. And it was just amazing to see how much he loved her and how much she loved him. So a week after I had her, I was back in school taking all my finals. And I just knew I wanted to get my teaching degree. So even though she was little, I had many people who would watch her, and I managed to get my teaching degree. So I became an elementary school teacher, not a music teacher anymore. And while I was in training, I had just gotten a job, and I had to go for training over the summer to go to the state parks. And I wound up meeting the one guy out of all women that were there, and we started talking. And he was such a really nice guy. And after a week of doing the training, we said, all right, let's see where this goes. And within a year, we were married. And God sent me the most wonderful man who accepted me, who accepted my daughter as his own. He wound up adopting her. And then God blessed me with 2 more girls after that. And I have a family that I never thought I could have. And I am so thankful for the way my life has turned out. And God was in it every step of the way. And now my daughter is 31, my oldest, and she has a little boy. So now I have a little grandbaby, and he just turned 1 in January. His name is Quincy, and he is the love of my life. And I am so incredibly thankful for God's hand on everything in my life, even when I didn't know it was there, that he was guiding me through it. He put people in my life to help me through it. And I am so thankful for the blessings that I have in my little grandbaby, in my daughters. So my 3 daughters now, I just have this family that I never thought I could have. And I am so thankful for who God is and how he could take something that seems broken or not good, and he could create something beautiful out of that. So I'm just thankful for what he's done in my life.